In May and June 1940, after the German army launched its rapid and overwhelming blitzkrieg through France, the British 51st Highland Division and other Allied forces were ordered to hold the line in northern France, separate from the main British evacuation at Dunkirk. As German forces, led by Rommel's panzer divisions, swept westward and encircled the coast, the British units found themselves trapped around Saint-Valery-en-Caux with no way out. Bad weather prevented Royal Navy ships from reaching them, and German artillery and tanks closed in relentlessly, cutting off all escape routes. After fierce fighting, with supplies exhausted and no hope of reinforcement or evacuation, around 10,000 British troops were forced to surrender on the 12th of June 1940, a bitter blow in the final collapse of France. My name is Captain Richard Edmund Hyde-Smith. I led the ship during these events and will go over some of the history using cutting-edge technology. We begin in northern France, where HMS Wellington was sent to Le Havre in June 1940 to help with the emergency evacuation of Allied troops during Operation Cycle, following the fall of Dunkirk. Captain Hyde stared at the black smoke billowing from Le Havre, his gut twisting with a sick, hollow feeling. The city, once a bustling gateway to France, was now a ruin, burning docks, shattered homes, and the desperate screams of civilians echoing through the chaos. He must have felt a deep sense of failure and helplessness, knowing that all the bravery of his men couldn't stop the collapse around them. Watching the flames consume the harbour, he likely thought grimly that the war was slipping beyond their control, that everything familiar was being swallowed by a darkness they couldn't outrun. In the capture of Le Havre in 1940, the Germans used a mix of fast-moving armoured units and heavy firepower. They deployed Panzer III and IV tanks to punch through defences, backed by mobile artillery like the LEFH 18 105mm howitzers to batter enemy positions. Infantry units armed with Carabiner 98K rifles, MP-40 submachine guns, and MG-34 machine guns advanced quickly behind the armour. They also used Stuka dive bombers, Ju-87, to bomb and terrorise defenders from the air, breaking morale and causing chaos before the ground assault swept in. Heinkel HE-111 bombers sank British ships by dropping high-explosive bombs on evacuation vessels near Saint-Valery. Flying low and fast, they struck packed transports, setting ships ablaze and sinking them before they could escape. Erwin Rommel is getting his men ready. He is saying, "Listen quickly. The 51st Highland Division is stuck in Saint-Valery. No escape. Tanks in front, infantry in the lead. Close the road to the west, secure the port. Have artillery ready, but I want prisoners, not rubble. Instant movement, no delay. We strike before they can regroup." This was one amazing tactician. Erwin Rommel, leading from the front, personally directed fire onto Saint-Valery from his Panzer, using its main gun to blast defensive positions and force a quicker surrender. Under his command, tanks shelled the town relentlessly, collapsing resistance street by street. Before its destruction in 1940, Saint-Valery-en-Caux was a peaceful, picturesque coastal town where the serene streets and bustling harbour seemed a world away from the chaos that would soon engulf it. But as German forces closed in, the calm was shattered by the roar of artillery and the first explosions that would mark the beginning of hostilities as soldiers scrambled to defend the town.
Ranks to realise that this can only be achieved by the full cooperation of everyone. Men may have to walk 5 or 6 miles. The utmost discipline must prevail. Men will board the boats with equipment and carrying arms. Vehicles will be rendered useless without giving away what's being done. Carriers should be retained as the final rearguard. Routes back to the nearest highway should be reconnoitred and officers detailed as guides. Finally, if the enemy should attack before the whole force is evacuated, all ranks must realise that it is up to them to defeat them. He may attack with tanks, and we have quite a number of anti-tank guns behind. If the infantry can stop the enemy's infantry, that is all that is required, while anti-tank guns and rifles inflict casualties on armoured fighting vehicles.
After the Germans had destroyed Saint-Valery-en-Caux, the town lay in ruins, its once bustling streets now filled with rubble and smoke, the harbour choked with wrecked ships. The air was heavy with the scent of burning buildings, and the silence of destruction was broken only by the distant echoes of war. Amid the chaos of Saint-Valéry's collapse, a young British soldier scrambled through the wreckage, his heart pounding as explosions shook the ground around him. With the sounds of gunfire and falling debris closing in, he finally reached the beach, breathless and bloodied, where he saw his final chance to escape across the churning sea. The ships that took part in Operation Cycle were a mix of hastily assembled civilian and military vessels, ranging from small fishing boats to larger warships like HMS Wade and HMS Wren, braving the treacherous waters to evacuate British and French troops from the encircled ports. Despite the constant threat of German air raids and U-boat attacks, these ships fought through the chaos, their decks overcrowded with soldiers, many of whom were barely able to cling to life as they were carried to safety. The British troops waiting on the beaches of Saint-Valery were exhausted, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty, as they huddled together in small groups, eyes constantly scanning the horizon for any sign of rescue. The risks were immense, constant bombardment from German artillery, strafing from enemy aircraft, and the looming threat of being cut off before they could board the few remaining ships, with the cold, churning sea offering the only escape from the encroaching enemy. The German forces, relentlessly pounding the beach with artillery and strafing the waiting troops from above, turned the shoreline into a killing zone where every second spent exposed felt like an eternity. They unleashed a torrent of high-explosive shells from heavy howitzers, while MG-34 machine guns raked the sand, and Stuka dive bombers screamed down, releasing bombs that shattered the air with a deafening roar. Above it all, the monstrous 88mm guns thundered from the distance, their shells slicing through the air with terrifying precision, tearing apart anything in their path. The Stuka dive bombers were terrifying, their shrill, ear-piercing sirens wailing as they swooped down from the sky, signaling death was imminent. With incredible precision, they released their bombs, sending shockwaves through the ground and leaving soldiers frozen in terror, knowing there was nowhere to hide from the inevitable strike. Swimming in the cold, churning waters to reach the ships must have felt like a battle against both the sea and the brutal chill that numbed the body with every stroke. The waves crashed relentlessly against the soldiers, their muscles screaming in pain as they fought the freezing water, the fear of drowning just as real as the enemy's fire. Later on in the war, HMS Wellington took part in convoy escort operations. She was working in a team of ships and planes, including the Short Sunderland. Equipped with depth charges and Hedgehog anti-submarine mortars, Sunderland reconnaissance planes played a vital role in protecting Allied convoys from German U-boat attacks, often patrolling the Atlantic and other strategic routes. The HMS Wellington played a crucial role in sinking a U-boat during World War II through its anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Equipped with depth charges and sonar, the ship detected the U-boat's presence beneath the waves and began a coordinated attack. As the depth charges hit, the U-boat shuddered violently, and the crew was thrown into panic as water began flooding in. The sound of groaning metal and rushing water filled the air, while the terrifying knowledge of impending doom hung over them, knowing each blast could be their last. Launching its depth charges with precision. After several tense minutes of tracking and barrage, the U-boat was struck, sinking it beneath the ocean, and the HMS Wellington was credited with one of the many successful actions in the battle against German submarines.